For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Shannon Durehove. Political analyst Moeletsi Mbeki is in studio with me today to discuss wealth creation and black economic empowerment in South Africa. Welcome.
Thank you.
Moeletsi, you predict that South Africa's Tunisia Day or a similar revolt to those taking place in the Arab world will occur in 2020. What makes you say this?
Well, in the article that I wrote initially, I said that this is dependent on China. As you know, China has become South Africa's largest trading partner. And the Chinese economy is a very dynamic economy. It changes almost every 5 or 10 years. The Chinese government has said that in 2020, the current phase of industrialization of China, which is very minerals intensive, will come to an end. In fact, they are already starting to revise the growth of to revise downwards the growth of the Chinese economy. Recently, the Chinese Prime Minister made an announcement that they are targeting growth rates to come down to 7% for the Chinese economy. So the Chinese economy, they are trying to reduce pollution, they are trying to reduce the consumption of minerals, to focus less on infrastructure and more on the consumption of the population. So the Chinese economy is going to be less metals intensive in terms of their use of minerals when they make this transition. Now, most of our exports to China are minerals, and a lot of metals go to China. So it stands to reason that if this is what China is going to, the Chinese economy, that's the way it's going to be going, then there's going to be a reduction for the demand for metals, and their prices will start to slow down. So that's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is the South African government side. South African government is increasing more and more its indebtedness. In the recent budget by the Minister of Finance, he virtually said he's expecting to triple South Africa's indebtedness from about $500 million to over $1 trillion, to 1.3, I think he said, trillion rands. So we're increasing our indebtedness, we're borrowing more. That's one side. We're increasing our social welfare spending. That again is going up. The consequence is that our exports are likely to be declining. In the meantime, we are spending more and more, and we will be getting less income. And something has to give somewhere along the line. The government has to start cutting back. And we are seeing aspects of this already happening, by the way. The current situation about the toll roads, the tolling of the roads around Gauteng, around Johannesburg, there's already a near revolt about the tolling. The consequence, the government has gone out and borrowed money to repair these roads. The people are saying we're not going to pay the tolls. Then what's going to happen? South Africa's ability to borrow will decline, which means again a lot of the financing that the government is committing itself to will become more and more expensive. So when all these two things get together, you have to start cutting back, especially on the welfare program. And that's why I was saying that our Tunisia Day, that's when it's likely to happen. But it might happen sooner.
I hope not. You mentioned that in 16 years of ANC rule, all the symptoms of a government out of its depth have grown worse. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, the government has been unable, for example, to control the urbanization of South Africa. Almost every time you drive out of any city, there are these huge shanty towns that are emerging. That's loss of control by the government. They don't know how to control the urbanization process. If I go to China, for example, you never see shanty towns like Diepsloot that you see in South Africa. The Chinese government is able to control the urbanization process. That's one sign of since the ANC came to power, the life expectancy in South Africa has declined catastrophically. So a South African born today has far less of a life expectancy than South African born 20 years ago. So that's another sign of a government that's not able to cope with its obligation. If you take education, the public schooling system, which is controlled by the government, the kids who wrote matric last year, half of the kids who entered 12 years before dropped out of school. So we're having a situation where our schooling system is really a waste of money, because if 50% of the kids who started school 12 years ago have not written matric, they dropped out all along the way. Our population is not being productive. It's not going to be productive for the future going forward. Then you are going to get this massive bulge of youth unemployment, which we already have, but it's just growing and growing. So these are signs of a government that is not able to cope, because it's unable to do policies that incentivize the entrepreneurs and the industrialists to invest more and to employ more labor. I can give you the example of what's happening with the mineral rights sector, for example. The mayhem that the government has created with mineral rights, like the Kumba iron ore situation, Lonmin and others, is creating a situation of so much uncertainty that investors are not going to invest in the development of the mining industry in this country. But that's the heart of our economy, and it's a primary source for our engineering industry, for other downstream industries. So this is why I was saying that the government shows all the signs of a government that is out of its depth.
Now, you are also particularly critical of black economic empowerment in South Africa. Why is this, and what can South Africa do, in your view, to improve the situation?
In my view, we had policies of racial preferences in the past. The National Party had a policy called apartheid, which was a racial preference for the Afrikaners primarily. That was their racial preference. You cannot continue with policies of racial preference because they disincentivize other racial groups. Now, the blacks are the majority in this country. If you are going to have racial preferences for the majority, the rest of the country, first, it's actually meaningless exercise, and because you have to choose a small group within the majority to benefit from your racial preferences. And we are seeing in the current debate, in the current attack on the colored population by people like Jimmy Manyi and Cooley Roberts, they are trying to create an atmosphere whereby the colored people should be excluded from these racial preferences. So racial preferences we cannot continue with racial preferences. In the past, from the National Party, they led to chaos. They led to almost the country going towards a civil war. We have to eliminate racial preferences in this country and encourage all our citizens to feel that South Africa is their home. No one is getting special treatment, and support everyone who needs support from the government or from the taxpayer, irrespective of race. So I have been against racial preferences during the National Party regime. That's why I was in exile. I'm against racial preferences during the ANC period.
Now, what, in your opinion, can the government do to improve the current political situation, with special emphasis on the social needs of the country?
Well, the solution to our problems is a very clear and a transparent system, for example, for mineral rights. Today, we have a completely opaque system for mineral rights. When you get mineral rights, nobody knows why you are getting mineral rights and why I am not getting mineral rights. So we have a completely opaque system, and opaque systems are recipes for corruption. So you then get corruption in those areas. When you get corruption in a key industrial area like mining, then you don't get investment, then you don't create jobs. Then all your other problems multiply. There are many other. We have to sort out our education system so that we have a productive education system that produces people who have the skills and the ability to create wealth in South Africa, not to just sit at home. These are all the things that need to be done. For example, we have to diversify our exports. More and more of our exports are minerals. More and more of our imports are things that we should be producing, which are maize, for example, beef. South Africa is a net beef importer. Why? Because we do nothing about commercializing the 6 million cattle that are sitting in the former homelands. If you commercialize those, help the owners of those cattle to commercialize their livestock, we wouldn't be importing beef like we're importing beef today from the European Union, from Argentina, Australia, and all these other places. So there are numerous things, opportunities that South Africa has, but we have enormously poor leadership in this country.
So what do you think they can do to improve it then?
To improve the leadership, I think you should ask the ANC. They are the government. I think maybe that's an appropriate question as to what can they do to improve the leadership, because they are the leadership of the country, and they are coming up with no solutions to the country's problems.
Well, thank you very much for your input. Fascinating talking to you.
Thank you.